Lesson 2-4, adding integers, and in this lesson you learn to add integers. Okay. Now in adding integers, we can use counters to model operations with integers. So in this book, yellow counters will represent positive integers. Red counters will represent negative integers. Okay. But before we start adding integers using counters, there are two important properties to keep in mind when modeling integers. First important property is that when one positive counter is paired with one negative counter, the result is called a zero pair. Simply put, if I have a yellow counter and uh, a red counter together, okay, this is our zero pair. Okay, that's the first important property. The other important property is this: you can add or remove zero pairs from the mat because removing or adding zero does not change the value of the counters on the mat. It pretty much makes sense if you say 3 plus 0, for example, will not change 3. It will still be 0. Sorry, it will still be 3. And 3 minus 0 will still be 3. That's what it's saying. If you add a 0 pair, it will not change the value. If you subtract the 0 pair, it will also not change the value. That's what's on the mat. The mat is what we will use uh, to put our counters in. Okay, so if you take a look at example number 1 and we want to find 2 plus negative 4, remember, okay, first off, 2 plus 4 means combine a set with 2 items with a set of 4 items. For example, 2 blackbirds plus 2 crows means 6 crows and blackbirds. That's what it means, right? So in the expression negative 2 plus negative 4, okay, in the same manner, means something similar. It tells you to combine a set of 2 negative items with a set of 4 negative items. So let's use counters to model negative 2 plus negative 4. We place 2 negative counters on the mat. That's negative 2. And we place 4 negative counters on the mat. Okay, that's negative 4. And if we add them, you'll notice that we'll end up with negative 6. There are 6 negative counters because this represents negative 1 and the yellow one represents, let me make it blue so that we can see this, positive 1 or simply 1. Okay, that's easy enough. Okay, take a look at example number 2. Wait, before we do that, let's just summarize what we just did here. Okay, we know now that we now have negative 2 plus negative 4 equals negative 6. Okay, okay, let's find negative 4 plus 2. Okay, negative 4 plus 2, place 4 negative counters and 2 positive counters on the mat. Okay, so let's do that first. Place 4 negative counters. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and 2 positive counters on the mat. 1. Let's put it down here. And 2. Right there. So that's what it means, negative 4 plus 2. Okay, next. Okay, it is possible to remove 2 0 pairs, and these are our 0 pairs right here. Okay, it's 2, and these 2. Nope, not that one. Oh my goodness. Okay, do that again. These 2 we take out. Take those out of the mat. Okay, so we're left with two negative counters. So when you add up negative 4 plus 2, okay, you end up with negative 2 because you have two negative counters left. Okay? So that's how you add integers using counters. Okay? And let's do some exercises to do that. 3 plus 2 is easy enough. You just simply have 3 yellow counters, 3 2 counters will give you 5. Let's do number 2. 3 plus negative 2. So let's create our own mat here. Let's make this our mat right here. Okay, and that's our mat. And let's do number 2. Okay, number 2 is, let me get closer to our counters. It's easy for me to move them. 3 plus negative 2, meaning 3 positive counters. 1, 2, and 3 positive counters. 2 negative counters. Okay, and then we get our 0 pairs. That's a 0 pair. That's a 0 pair. We end up with negative, positive 1. So the result of 3 plus negative 2 is 1. Well, let's do this. 3 plus 2 obviously is going to be 5. Okay, and let's do the next one. Negative 3 plus negative 2. So if you want to do that one, just get rid of all of these. Okay, so we have negative 3 plus 2. We start with negative 3 negative counters, 2 positive counters. Okay, circle our 0 pairs. 0 pair, 0 pair, right there. Okay, and you're left with 1 negative counter. We take out our 0 pair from the mat. Answer would be negative 1. Okay, let's do another one. Okay. Let's do one more. Number 6, negative 3 plus 7. So let's make our mat again. That's our mat. Okay. I'm going to do my mat. There you go. Negative 3 plus 7, which means negative 3 counters, or 3 negative counters, 3 red counters, and 7 yellow counters. Okay, and we circle our 0 pairs. Okay, it's a 0 pair, another 0 pair, another 0 pair right there. You're left with 4 positive counters, so the result would be positive 4, or simply 4. Okay, and if you do this on your own, 4, 8, 5, and 7. Okay, pause the video, do that on your own. Okay, the answer would be negative 3 plus negative 2 is negative 5. This would be negative 3. Okay, negative 4 plus negative 4 would obviously give you negative 8. And this would be 0. Okay, and that's how you add using counters. Now let's take a look at another method of adding integers. Okay, in this case we will use a number line. Okay, let's say we want to find negative 5 plus negative 2. Okay, the first thing we need to do is start at 0, move 5 units to the left of 0, because negative 5 means going to the left of 0. Okay, so this is what it means, going 5 units to the left of 0. From there, move 2 more units to the left. Okay, so from negative 5, you're adding negative 2, 2 more units to the left, you'll end up with negative 7. So negative 5 plus negative 2 will give you negative 7. Okay? The results of this example and those in columns A and B above, well, within two columns A and B above, simply means this. That when you're adding integers with the same sign, okay, add their absolute values, give the result the same sign as the integers. Okay? So adding their absolute values, if you look at negative 5, the absolute value of negative 5 is 5. Absolute value of negative 2 is 2. Okay? So basically what it's saying is get the absolute value of negative 5, add it to the absolute value of negative 2. Okay? This would be 5 plus 2, okay, equals 7. And then same in the last sentence it says give the result the same sign as their integers. Okay, so since the integers are negative, this now becomes negative 7. Okay, using a number line and using absolute values. Let's take a look at example number 2. Example number 2. Study example number 2 to see if you can discover the rule for adding integers that have different signs. 8 plus negative 4, use counters. Put 8 positive counters on the mat and 4 negative counters. Remove all 0 pairs. So you have 8 positive counters, okay, and you have 4 negative counters, okay, and we want to remove the 0 pairs. These are our 0 pairs. What remains are 4 positive counters. So 8 plus negative 4 is 4 using counters. Okay, let's take a look at 7 plus 4 and let's use a number line for this. Use a number line, start at 0, move 7 units to the left of 0. So this is your 0, 7 units to the left of 0. Okay, and then from negative 7, okay, move 4 units to the right, okay, because you're adding 4. Okay, every time you add, you go to the right. Every time you subtract, you move to the left of the number line. So you end up with negative 3. So negative 7 plus 4 will give you negative 3, which brings us to a rule when we are adding integers with different signs. The results in these examples and those in column C and D, okay, well, we didn't do column C and D, so forget that. Suggest the following rule, that when you add integers with different signs, subtract their absolute values, give the result the same sign as the integer with a greater absolute value. Okay, what does that mean? Take a look at example number 3. Tells you exactly what it means. Solve each equation. X equals negative 9 plus 6. Again, get their absolute values and subtract their absolute values. Okay, so absolute value of 9 minus the absolute value, the absolute value of negative 9 minus the absolute value of 6. Why is it negative? Why is it negative? Because, okay, if you look at negative 9 and 6, if you disregard the sign of negative 9 and 6, the greater number would be 9, and the sign of the greater number is negative. That's why you have a negative there, and you have negative 3 as your answer. Okay, just like what the definition says. Okay, give the result the same sign as the integer with the greater absolute value. So in this case, negative 9 has the greater absolute value, and the sign of negative 9 is negative, obviously, so we give it the sign negative. Okay, there B, let's solve 8 plus negative 3 plus 4. Okay, so 8 plus negative 3 plus 4, using what we call the commutative property of addition, we can now have 8 plus 4 plus negative 3, okay, using the commutative property of addition. And then we add 8 and 4. Sorry, not that one. We add 8 and 4. We now have 12 plus negative 3. The result is positive because absolute value of 12 is greater than the absolute value of 3, and that's why the answer would be 9. Okay. If you want, you can check yourself with calculator. I don't really suggest that, but that's one way to find out if your answer is correct or not, or you can use counters. Okay. So take a look at example number 4. It's on the other page, I think. Yes, it is. During a spacewalk on February 9, 1995, astronauts Bernard Harris and Michael Foale worked in the shadow of the shuttle Discovery. The temperature outside the cargo bay was negative 125 degrees Fahrenheit. If the temperature inside the cargo bay was 111 degrees warmer, what was the temperature inside? Okay, since this is a word problem, we use a 4-step plan to solve this problem. First, let's explore. Okay, the temperature outside the cargo bay was negative 125 degrees Fahrenheit. Inside, it was 111 degrees warmer. We'll need to find the temperature inside. Okay, just like any word problem, we need a let statement. So let T represent the temperature inside. Plan, translate the words into an equation using the variable that we just defined. Okay, so the temperature inside is a sum of negative 125 and 111. Okay, so in solving that, if we know that's a sum, we simply solve. Temperature inside is T is equal to the outside temperature plus 111 degrees Fahrenheit, and that should give you T equals negative 125 plus 111. You don't really need a calculator for this. Okay, the answer would be negative 14. Why is that? Because again, if we follow the format here, this now becomes, okay, it is now the absolute value of negative 125 minus the absolute value of 111. Okay, but since 125 is greater than 111 and the sign of 125 is negative, the sum of these two absolute values, or the difference, would be negative as well. So this is now 125 minus 111, okay, and the negative sign there, and you end up with that answer, negative 14. Okay, and finally, checking our answer, all we need to do is the amount of increase was less than the absolute value of negative 125, so the temperature inside the cargo bay should still be negative. Okay, answer is reasonable. Example number 5, last one. You can use the rules for adding integers and distributive property to combine like terms. If you want to simplify letter A, negative 15n plus 22n, okay, we know that using the distributive property, we can put negative 15 plus 22 in parentheses, then multiply it by n. Okay, using our rules for adding integers, we have 2 a negative and a positive. Okay, if you have two integers with different signs, subtract their absolute value, you end up with 7. Okay, negative 15 plus 22 is 7, and n. Find the sum of negative 15 plus 22, and you end up with 7n. Next example, 9x minus 18x plus 8x. Okay, again, using the distributive property, this becomes bracket 9 plus negative 18 plus 8. Okay, follow the rules of adding integers. Negative 9 plus positive 9 plus negative 18 will give you negative 9, plus 8 will give you negative 1. So this becomes negative 1x. Adding 9 is negative 18 plus 8. Or simplify that, it simply is negative x. Okay, this is the identity property of multiplication. That was a long lesson. End of the lesson. On Google Forms, type a summary of what you've learned. Okay, write down the methods or on how to add and subtract, sorry, how to add integers using counters and using the number line and using absolute values as well, and type of question you might want to ask in class. In class, remind me to teach you the song on how to add and subtract integers. Thank you.